Decisions are one of the largest driving factors of any campaign in Crusader Kings 3. From the generic ones such as form an empire or strengthen a bloodline, to the unique decisions such as establishing Danelaw or dismantling the Greek or German pretenders for the Holy Roman Empire and Byzantine Empire respectively. There are a lot of different ways to get into exciting directions for your campaign. In this video, I'm going to go over some of the more unique or maybe lesser known decisions. You have probably stumbled upon them in your playthroughs just by happenstance, but some are a bit more difficult to discover. I'll be using the Crusader Kings 3 Wikipedia as a resource to pull the requirements and the benefits of these decisions, which you can find linked in the description if you'd like an easy reference guide or if you just don't want to watch the video. You can also find plenty of bookmarks in the timeline that you can just simply jump to if you want to find a specific decision. I'll do my best to show off every decision in the actual menu versus just talking about it, but I'm mainly going to give you an idea of how to trigger these decisions in your game for your next playthrough. And as always, if you've yet to pick the game up, you can find a link in my description to my newly launched storefront on Nexus. The platform gets keys directly from the developer and provides them to you to be placed into Steam, and it's a great way to support the channel. So thank you very much if you decide to use my link. But let's now go into our unique decisions guide for Crusader Kings 3. So our first big decision to talk about is forming the Outremer Empire. And this is going to be probably one you've seen before if you've done any Holy Wars for Catholicism. So what we're going to do here is I have just won the Great Holy War for Jerusalem, and I have contributed enough war contribution to have my beneficiary become the King of Jerusalem. I'm going to unpause here, and it's going to ask me, okay, there's a new kingdom. I wonder what kind of ruler he will be. So as some kind of quick hard tips here on this one, before you actually go about even doing this and wanting to form the Outremer Empire, take a look at the person you have as your beneficiary. I didn't really pay much attention to that, and I have a guy who's shy. So that should be like your step one thing. Make sure your beneficiary is going to be a good king, or at least someone who's got neutral enough perks that it's not going to hinder you as a king. The rest of his abilities aren't too awesome, so I kind of screwed the pooch on this one. But we're going to bring up decisions. I can see forming the empire right here. And when you form it, you also get a special culture, the Outremer culture. Now Outremer means out to sea, basically, oversea empire that was created for the Crusader kingdoms during the First Crusade. So this empire requires you to control the region. Scroll a little bit. I'm going to press this, close this, and we can see a rough highlight here to just outside of Anatolia or Asia Minor in the north, all the way over here in the east, all the way south here to Mecca. So you can see it's a pretty huge swath of land. It is nice because you have these two impassable terrain chunks, so you're not having to fight your way through those portions of actual land. But you need to control all of that region, and then you also need to have the level of living legend, and you have to hold the title of king. So once you do that, you will then form a genuinely holy land, as it is called. And the cool thing about this is you do get your own special culture with it. Now, as of patch 1.1, I can't click it to show you guys, this culture will take on the parent culture's innovations plus one random one. So if I were to say take over right now, it would take all of my current Sicilian innovations, all of my locations, and add that into the Outremer culture. So if you're worried about that being an issue, or if you've done this in the past and it was an issue, it has now been fixed. The nicest thing about this, though, is, of course, it increases the fervor of Catholicism. It destroys the Sunni Caliphate title, and the culture in Jerusalem changes to Outremer as well, and you get the men-at-arms and desert tactics innovations. But in addition to this, and it doesn't show on here, the empire itself, and this won't show us either, but the empire itself will allow us to combine all of these kingdom titles into one overarching title, essentially. it will destroy the rest of them and create one that is all de jure part of your new Outremer empire. So this is a very cool one. I think it's one that a lot of people have already seen already, just because they maybe have done a holy war and they've probably won it. But this one is a really great way to take your existing campaign and send it on a whole new direction with forming this empire. Our next decision brings us all the way over to India, and this is actually a combination. There's two decisions here. The first one we're going to talk about is the Chakravarti. Now this is indicative of a lot of different portions of this area, but the ones that you'll be able to see right from the start are the Chedi, the Parmar, or the Kalyani Chalukya. Now if I jump into one of these, let's just press start, play on the Chedi here. It's the easiest for me to pronounce. And I bring up the decisions panel, I can see become Chakravarti. Now, clicking this, it shows me that for the most part, you just really have to control all of India. So Rajasthan, the Deccan Empire down here, or the Bengal Empire over here on the right. So as long as you press this button, you hold these three empires, you can become the Chakravarti. Now the other decision in this is the take stewardship of the sacred river. And this has the special nickname, the Lord of the Ganga, or as it is called, the Ganges. So if I click this right here, completely control the region of the Ganges plain, and that's right here. So as you're going to become the Chakravarti, this is a unique decision that is already included in it. And both of these are relegated to specific religions or specific regional occupation. So if you want to go about these decisions, your best bet is to become one of these three nations. And to be totally honest with you, we've talked about this before, but swapping over to the development mode, you can already see by becoming the Parmar, you have access to a ton of really high development locations, which is going to be very, very beneficial for you. Also, depending upon which time stamp you're starting in, which historical bookmark, you get access to a lot of really amazing innovations too. So right here you can see they start with this innovation, and by looking also back into tribal, they get elephantry. But if I switch over here and go back to tribal, they still get elephantry. Some though have access to Woot's steel. Now look at this, it's pretty awesome. Heavy infantry bonus, heavy cav bonus, and a prowess bonus. So there are a lot of really amazing starting locations in India, and I think they're kind of overlooked for a lot of the Western European starting locations, or even the Middle East starting locations. But these three alone make for some very fun and very interesting, very strong cultural starting locations that give you access to two very cool decisions. Now, the Chakravarti depends upon you being a Buddhist, Hindu, or a member of Jainism. So if you're not one of those three, you will not get that decision. But starting as, I'd say, Parmara is probably the easiest and the best way to accomplish one, if not both, of these decisions. The decision to establish the Bacrtrian supremacy is another really fun and unique decision. Now this one will only take place in the 867 timestamp. The 1066 does not allow for this, at least from my quick checking and trying to recreate it. But essentially this is going to recreate the Bactrian Empire. So to really do this, we're going to press T, and this will show us all the cultures. The key to starting this decision is being of the Afghani culture. It doesn't matter who you are or where you are, as long as your culture is Afghanistan. Or I'm sorry, Afghani. And what we're going to do here is take a look at these locations, because they start right, I'm sorry, not that one. But these locations pretty much start right in this big old swath of Afghanistan. So let's jump on down here to, actually, yeah, I'm set already. So we have to jump to decisions. Where is our capital? There. And it's Afghan. We ourselves are Afghan. So we can see establish the Bactrian supremacy. Now, if I, for example, was not Afghan, let's just switch to this character. All you would need to do is jump in decisions and convert to local culture and make sure this is the Afghan culture. I'll just show you, we'll acknowledge that, and boom. major decisions establish the Bactrian supremacy. So this is a very interesting one because it gives you a direction for how to become a feudal country. And you have to do that for this. You have to have a feudal government. That's one of your requirements. You have to have your capital in the region of Bactria. And if I click this, it'll show me the region of Bactria. And you have to completely control this region. You also have to be either Zoroastrian or Buddhist. So this is a very different and very unique decision that I don't think a lot of us even knew about, because it's not necessarily very well hidden, but I wouldn't have ever thought to look for this. And you do get some benefits here. Of course, you get the Empire of Bactria. That becomes your primary title. And I think historically, it's a very cool situation. Bactria is one of those last holdout colonies of the Indo-Greek Empire from Alexander the Great. But you also get in the Walia of Bulk, you get royal tolls. So building construction time -10, cost -10%, and development growth plus 0.5. So if you are looking to recreate that Bactrian Empire, you need to simply start in a location that allows for Afghani culture, or be somewhere else and move there and convert the culture. But if you want to start right out the gate, you simply need to have someone go to Afghani culture, and then you're going to want to establish the Bactrian supremacy. And this is going to be, depending on who you take as your starting location, this can be pretty difficult. You can do this as the Saffarids. It'll be kind of hard because they already start with an uphill slope in mind. You can do this as the Samanids, which might be a little bit easier because you're surrounded by, I would say, less staunch competition. With the Saffarids, you really are up against the Abuses, which is not too far away from you. And you have the ability to really kind of lose control of your empire quickly, especially because you start at -1100 prestige. So I would say Samanids, the Shahi, the Tahirids, or Tahirid, is maybe another good one. But these allow you to establish the Bactrian supremacy with at least somewhat ease. Another really fun and pretty easy decision is empowering the Sicilian Parliament. Let's go ahead and bring up our decision menu again and go to major decisions, empower the Sicilian Parliament. And this one's pretty interesting. It doesn't have the craziest requirements, but it does have some pretty interesting ones. So for one, you need a level of fame that is illustrious or above. Learning is 10 or above. You do not have the law autonomous vassal. Number 1, I believe, pass autonomous vassals. Going back to this, you need to have at least one of these. Have the title of the Kingdom of Sicily, the Kingdom of Naples, or this one. And you need, again, one of these, either the Duchy of Sicily or the Duchy of Capua. Now, you also have to move your capital to either Palermo or, well, it's Sicily or Capua. It has to be, your capital has to be in either one of these. And from what I've actually been reading on the online, because I didn't understand how to create the Kingdom of Naples, it seems that this actual decision will create the Kingdom of Naples. It seems to be dependent upon whether or not you fully control Sicily. So it seems to be a kind of a wonky decision, and that sometimes it makes it and sometimes it doesn't. So if you have any experience with this and you have been able to create the Kingdom of Naples without issue, do let me know. Now, one thing this doesn't show us, though, are other requirements that you do need. You either have to be Central Germanic, Iberian, or of a Latin culture group. Right now, I am Sicilian, which is part of the Latin culture group. You can be Central Germanic, and again, you can be Iberian. So you do have to keep these things in mind. It's one of those kind of hidden things for the Empower Sicilian Parliament. So if you were to say start as any of the Islamic faiths that start down here in in Sicily actual, then you will not actually be able to create the empowerment of the Sicilian Parliament. So the benefits of this, though, Palermo gains a special building slot for Parliament, and this, it says Palermo, but it's just your capital. Gains a special building slot for the Parliament. Get the law absolute crown authority, so it's going to knock you up just 1. This says absolute because my current one is at 3. This will push you to 4. If you have 2, it'll push you to 3. And then every Sicilian county gains parliamentary bureaucracy, which is awesome. minus 5% to construction time, to cost, and to a plus 10% to development growth. This one is not necessarily very difficult to achieve. I think especially if you're starting as the Duke of Apulia over here with Robert Guiscard, it's quite easy. You just simply go take over Capua. These two Napoli and Capua are your two counties you need to capture. Pretty easy, pretty cut and dry. Or go take the Duchy of Sicily, which will take a little bit longer just because you have to do holy war after holy war after holy war, because you have a little bit more of a diversity of target down here. So if you want to jump to this decision quickly, I would say just simply take over Capua and try to create one of the titles that you need to empower the Sicilian parliament. But I think this is one of those ones that is a little hidden, and it is dependent upon certain culture groups, but I think it's a really cool one to get that Sicilian parliament activated in your capital. The next decision is establishing the Norman culture. Now, there are two other cultures you can establish through decision. Outremer culture, which we talked about a second ago, Norman culture, and then the one that we'll talk about in just a little bit. But the Norman culture here is pretty cool to establish because it has a lot of historical connotations, right? When you think about the history of the Normans, it's all because they were Norse Vikings that were raiding into France, and the French king essentially gave them Normandy as saying like, hey, just don't attack us anymore, take Normandy. That's the Spark Notes version of it. So we're going to go over how to establish this decision. So what you have to be is, first, you have to be of any kind of Norse culture. Doesn't matter where you are on the map as far as where you start. Just choose one. If you want to choose Bjorn Ironside from Upland, you can go ahead and do that and kind of divert your Danelaw war. But when you take a look at this duchy map in Neustria, you need to take this entire duchy. And once you capture the duchy, you will then have the decision to establish the Norman culture. Now, the interesting, or at least cool part about this is when you establish this culture, you are going to take the current Norse innovations and the current French culture innovations and combine them together. That's really powerful. So let's take a look here at the Norse ones. We've got barracks, mustering ground, quilted armors, currency, gavelkind, I'm not sure which one it is, assemblies, longships, all the goods. If I click over to French, we're going to gain public works, crop rotation, ledger, onager, banis. So you do get a lot of really cool things that combine here. I'm not 100% sure if longships retains. From everything I've seen and read, it does. So hopefully then you'll know that being a Norman in the 867 timestamp, that's another thing. You have to be obviously starting in 867 because in 1066, Normandy is already created. But don't worry, that's going to come back around when we talk about the next culture you can establish. This is, again, a really awesome kind of hidden decision you probably didn't know to check into unless you really knew the culture or the history of Normandy. Now, since we talked about Normans in 867, it's time to talk about William the Conqueror in 1066. The Embrace English Culture decision is another very fun one, and it plays, direct homage here to the historical connotations of William the Conqueror. So you can see it's kind of a shit show over here for the Kingdom of England right now. But if I bring up our decisions, you can see, and you've probably already discovered this one playing as William the Conqueror, but as long as you are a Frankish culture group, which again, the Normans are, you can embrace the English culture. Now, otherwise, this is an Anglo-Saxon, right? If you look at anyone else that is not, looks like he's pretty much gotten Norman across the whole entire line. Way to go, William. But yeah, Anglo-Saxon would be what the default English holders would be. So you would adopt the English culture and things would change up a little. So for one, your realm capital has to be in England. We can't do that right now because our realm capital is down here in Normandy. So that's step number one, moving your realm capital up into England actual. Then obviously having the Kingdom of England title. Once you have those, pretty easy, especially if you're starting as William the Conqueror here, then you would simply adopt embrace the English culture. So what this means then is every Norman or French vassal in England adopts the English culture, all family members, and of course every Anglo-Saxon county in England has a 40% chance of changing over to English. Now, the English culture gains several Norman and Anglo-Saxon innovations, and I don't know what that exactly means. From my testing and kind of looking at this a little bit, it doesn't seem to be a direct one-to-one like it is for the Norman culture. It seems to choose some at random as long as they don't overlap. So I'm not sure if that's going to be changed in a patch like we had with the Outremer culture, but hopefully it's a little bit more streamlined of a process because it seems to be somewhat random as is with embracing the English culture. Now, again, you don't have to be Norman. You just have to be of the Frankish culture group, which is going to be anyone that has this, right? Frankish culture group. So you don't need to be William the Conqueror to do such things, but that's probably the easiest way to establish or embrace the English culture. Moving over to another portion of the map, there is a decision for founding the Kingdom of Bosnia. This one's kind of tricky, so let's take a look at the map here to kind of really discuss this. For starters, you have to be either Croatian, Bosnian, or Serbian in your culture. So if you want to start as anyone else, you can, but you'll have to convert to one of these three cultures to even get this going. So let's just kind of have that in mind to start off. We've selected Rama here because if we bring up the decisions, it's the only one, I think this one does actually as well, that has the Found Kingdom of Bosnia decision. Just right when you start in 1066. The reason behind this is we are the Croatian culture that has reached the early medieval age, but we're also in a location that is Bosnia, or I think it's Zaclumia. I'm not really sure how to pronounce that 100%. But let's switch over to the duchy titles, and we can see Bosnia right here, and we can see the Zaclumia down here. And since we have the duchy capital of Bosnia, we can trigger this decision. Now, one of the hardest parts about this decision, though, is not the territory. Both of these are right next to each other, both Bosnia and Zaclumia, so they're easy to gobble up. But the hardest part of this is getting a level of splendor greater or equal to reputable, level 4. That's not hard, but it does take time. And if you start as either one of these counts, let's take a look at this. You start with 30 renown. You're in it for the long haul at that point. So you can switch characters here. We're going to go with Slavonia, and you can simply do it through here. We would have to now take Rama and also take the subsequent duchy below it, both Bosnia and Zaclumia, to create this decision. As you can see, it's not right here. Even if we were to switch characters, go to the Kingdom of Croatia, not the easiest word for me to pronounce for some reason, click over on Rama, we can't even make this our realm capital because we do not directly own it. So you could technically, I think even if we did this, let me see. Yeah, you could try to take this duchy location, and you might be able then to trigger the decision from there, but you're already the king of Croatia, and this is specifically to create the Kingdom of Bosnia. So this is if you really want to go down that route and create Bosnia. Let's jump back over to Rama and up the decision here. You need to, of course, be an independent ruler. You have to own both the duchies of Bosnia and Zaclumia, and then you get the Kingdom of Bosnia with both of those duchies as de jure part of those of that title. So you're growing a kingdom within a kingdom, and it is going to be very difficult, and because obviously you're going to have to eat up the lands of other vassals. But outside of that, you're going to be pretty much surrounded by some pretty scary nations, with Hungary to the north, Byzantine Empire to the east, and the dreaded Holy Roman Empire to your west. So if you do decide to go about this decision, know that the cards are stacked against you, but I do think it's a really fun one to bring the Bosnian kingdom to light in the middle of your 1066 playthrough. While not necessarily a hidden decision, restoring Carolingian borders is an extremely huge and monumental task to undertake, as really any French culture individual in Crusader Kings 3. Let's take a look at this one. So you can obviously start as France, and sure, why not? You have a huge army, you have quite a bit at your disposal, but you're 14, and you have a lot of people vying for your throne. And on top of it, two of these people, one is the Duke of Aquitaine, the other one here is the Duke of Burgundy, have a lot of intrigue, and they can easily snipe you out of that position. So it can be pretty troublesome to do this decision as either one of them. So in my mind, I think it's easier to do this as either one of them, especially the Duke of Aquitaine. Because when we take a look at the actual decision itself, restore the Carolingian borders, you, for the most part, have to own Carolingian France, or Francia, which is just the Empire of Francia. Click this button, you can see the outline is pretty much the same. It doesn't even include Britannia, which is nice, and the actual empire itself does. So you have to control that. Then you have to control Frisia up here, Hungary down over here, Bavaria right there, Carolingian Germany, Iberia, which is just the northern portion, so the kingdoms of Navarre, Aragon, and Barcelona. And then you have to do northern Italy. So you can see there is a lot to do with this. And when you successfully complete it, you destroy the Holy Roman Empire title, and that guy is pretty mad at you if there's anything left of the Holy Roman Empire. Because as you've seen, the majority of this land right here is all the Holy Roman Empire. So the Germany kind of cuts you off right about here. That's about as far east as you'll be going, all the way south into France. So this portion to the right here will pretty much be what would be left of Holy Roman Empire, assuming it A, stays intact, and B, doesn't expand further eastward, north, south, whatever the situation is. But this is a very challenging decision. It is very apparent. You can just start it from pretty much any Frankish culture. But I think it's one that has a very particular challenge because it's not one that you can work towards very quickly in your game. If you start as the Duke of Aquitaine, you're one of the strongest dukes in the game with 1,700 troops. You have a really nice set of situations going for you. You're off to a good start. But here's something to kind of look with the Duke of Burgundy. He is in the line of succession for the king title of France. You look at the title here, and line of succession goes King Philip, then Prince Hugh, and then Prince Robert II, the Old of France. So your uncle. So basically, with this guy's already superb intrigue, keep in mind that these will roll differently for your game. But in this direct situation, I would just simply murder the brother and murder him. And voila, I am now the King of France, and I probably don't have to deal with as many issues with succession and other issues that have to deal with the poor relationship that the King of France typically has. You do have a lot of children, so that can be a bit of an issue with your actual succession as he's age 55. But I think this is a really strong way to get a jump on the Carolingian borders and establishing a stronger foothold in France rather than having to deal with a lot of subterfuge worked against you as the King of France. But however you really accomplish this, through whatever Frankish culture, just be aware you are in this for the long haul. You have to go down here into Iberia, all the way into Italy, and up over towards the majority of the Holy Roman Empire. But it's still a really fun and challenging decision to undertake. The next decision I want to talk about is mending the Great Schism. Now, the Schism is the schism between the Eastern and Western Christianity, and Orthodox Christianity in the East, and Latin Christendom or Catholicism in the West. So the easiest way to show off this decision is by using the Byzantine Empire. But let's go ahead and bring up our decision menu. So mending the Great Schism is pretty hard to do. You can do it as long as you're any Christian religion, meaning you can be either Orthodox or Catholicism. But you have to accomplish a number of things. For one, you have to have a religious devotion of religious icon or level of devotion. And then you need quite a few pretty hard to get counties. So you need Byzantium right here, followed by Antiochia right over here. You're going to need Jerusalem down here, Alexandria in northern Egypt, and then Roma, and you know where Roma is in Rome. So I've used the debug console to kind of work around this to create the circumstance in which we actually have the decision to show off. But you can see here, this is not the easiest one to do, especially because if you think about this, the Byzantine Empire is probably the easiest one to pull this off. They already start with 2 of the, what is it, total 5 locations that you need. When you look at this, you know, we already have Byzantium, we already have Antiochia. Jerusalem is not that far away, so it's a little bit easier to get to. The hardest one, I think, is Roma, because the papacy can rally a huge amount of mercenaries against you. So this one is going to be a very difficult one to accomplish for Roma alone. Alexandria is a little difficult, but you're not that far away from being able to do it, especially if you've already captured Jerusalem. But the important thing here to remember is that you can do this as any Christian faith. So if you are waiting for a holy war to kick off, and you take Jerusalem and maybe Antiochia at the same time, you kind of gobble up the Levant for the most part, well, Alexandria is not that far away. And by the time a holy war is kicked off, a great holy war like the Crusades, you're probably playing during 1066. You can do this in 867, but the decision takes a lot longer to actually come around. I believe you can, but I know 1066 for sure can obviously be done. And the important thing too is it's a lot harder to get Constantinople. Byzantium is not easy to snatch up. So it's probably the easiest to do as the Byzantine Empire, or to play as a duke within the Byzantine Empire and usurp control from the empire. Because when you're playing as the actual empire itself, you're going to be dealing with a lot of independence issues. You're going to deal with a lot of issues of people trying to just usurp you. So you're probably better off, you could even play right here as the Duke of Antioch. So if you do this, you already have one of the locations. You can spend your time expanding southward to grab Jerusalem, then expand westward to grab Alexandria. And the whole time you can really not worry so much about the Byzantine Empire, because you can kind of use some subterfuge or some succession trickery to put yourself in the line of succession. From there, you could really do what you want about trying to grab the papacy. In my opinion, though, I think it's probably easier to take the papacy itself, Roma, as the Byzantine Empire versus some duke who is slowly expanding his land south and westward, which will probably become a king on his own right. So this is a pretty unique one, but when you do accomplish it, take a look at this. Will mend the Great Schism, and the Orthodox Church will mend the schism and establish itself as the only legitimate branch of Christianity. Orthodoxy's fervor increased by 25. Every Christian faith with ecumenism loses that and gets a fervor decrease by 25. There's some other things that are going to happen here. Some other stuff to note is that there's an 80% chance of each character of a different Christian faith that used to have that trait or that tenet will convert to the character's faith. So it's not a guarantee that this happens. It's an 80% chance. On top of that, all characters with the cynical trait will convert, and all characters with the zealous trait will refuse. So this is something that you've already kind of seen before when you're trying to do your own conversions in your own lands. So be wary of this. It can have an effect here. So let's go ahead and press this button. And there we go. We've united the church. The universal church has been restored. And you get your own little nickname here. And I think for the most part, we can see that Orthodox Christianity is now the predominant religion in the land. I press this button. See, it's pretty much everywhere. Some places obviously have not converted. You can see pockets of Catholicism here and there. Even insular Ireland, for the most part, has converted too. So it's pretty cool to kind of see this all wrap up under one hood. But, like I said, it is not easy to pull off. And you're probably going to be looking at 100 to 200 years before you're able to sufficiently do this, especially taking out Roma. The next decision we're going to talk about is restoring Israel. This is a pretty unique one as well. I mean, they're all pretty unique in their own right. But there are not an actual ton of Jewish faiths represented across the map. In fact, if you're looking at the 867 bookmark, which I think is probably the easiest way to accomplish this decision, there's only 2 versions of the Jewish faith across the map. So this one down here by Abyssinia, and you don't even start out as this religion. So you have to convert to this religion, and it is not easy to do. So if I click other faiths right here, I can see all versions of Jewish faiths across Crusader Kings 3. And I can see which ones have a higher presence in the game. Clearly, Khyberism has the biggest one because that is the Khazaria, the massive horde here in the central steppes. Now, this could seem easy to just simply play the Khazaria and think, okay, I'm going to be fine to move south into Israel. Because if you want to accomplish this decision, we're going to open that up real quick. Oh, I got to switch over to them. You have to grab Palestine, Urdun, and then another word that I just cannot pronounce, Outer Jordan. And these locations, if the game ever wants me to go over here, these locations are not easy to get to if you play as the Khazaria, especially because the Khazaria is really not easy to deal with. You're going to deal with a lot of aggression from the west, a ton from the east, especially when the event kicks off for the Mongol horde. That's going to be really, really hard pressed against you. So, while you can simply do the Khazaria, forget everything and just run south through the Abbasids and the Byzantine Empire, because you're going to butt up against them in your dash southward. What might be the easier way to go about this is, again, going with a Duke. This way, you don't have to retain anything up here in the Khazaria. If we take a look at the decision, you simply have to have Illustrious Level of Fame, Level of Devotion 3, as well as owning these 3 duchies. That's it. You don't have to have anything up in this location. You could just as easily do it down here with this gentleman as well, but the issue is that he starts out as Coptic, and when you want to convert from Coptic to a Christian religion away from that religion, it's usually 500% penalty to do so. So it's a lot harder to acquire the piety to do such a thing, and moving north is not nearly as hard because you have a lot of fractured things in the way. But I think the easiest way to accomplish this decision would be simply to go here as a Duke in this location. I mean, you could go as the Khazaria if you so wish, but you're going to be up against so much more aggression from the west, north, and east that you're going to be probably pulled away from your ultimate target. Now, again, like I said before, you could just simply forsake these lands and just charge south as fast as you can, chopping into as much as you can at the same time. Really, the goal here is going to be to knock out these 2 targets, get to the Abbasids, and start your big war with them, try and eat this land up. But it's just going to be pretty difficult to do. At least as the Duke here, you are insulated from any aggression outward. Anyone from the west, north, and east cannot declare war on you. They can only declare war on your liege. So you get that kind of nice insulation, and you can expand at your own pace. You do, again, have to keep in mind, though, that if there's any wars for independence or anything that's going to reduce your liege's ultimate strength, then it is going to expose you until you get your feet kind of under you as you expand southward. But that is how you would restore Israel. We'll go ahead and press this button here. What's going to happen is we're going to get the Kingdom of Israel. That kingdom will be restored, and it is done. Now, of course, since we are an empire, that's not gonna kind of override us here, but here is the Khanate of Israel now established with this playthrough. Our next decision, Reclaim Britannia, is one you've probably seen if you played Scotland in either 867 or in 1066. I personally find that this is easier to accomplish in 867 because 1066 England is too unified, especially if William the Conqueror comes over. It's even a harder situation to deal with, and you have to deal with aggression from Norway. At least in 867, England for the most part is fragmented, so it's easier to deal with your opponents piecemeal. So taking a look at this one, we have used the cheats to pretty much create the situation that I want to talk about here, and there's 2 big requirements. One, own the region of Britannia, which is all of England, and then have all of your powerful vassals be either Berthonic or Goidelic. Again, I apologize for a mispronunciation of that, but that is a pretty broad scope. So Cumbrian will work, Welsh will work, Cornish will work, Pictish, Gaelic, Irish. Be careful when you're taking the Norse guy in. You don't want him to kind of mess that whole situation up. But all of my vassals are of one of those two cultural groups. That's important, because when you go to actually establish this, when you go to press the button, you have one of two options. You get the nickname Pendragon, which we will, because I started as Welsh for this one. So you'll gain the nickname Pendragon, or you'll get Tuatha de Danann if you are of the Goidelic group. So if you're Irish or if you're Gaelic, you'll get that nickname instead. So we're going to click Reclaim Britannia here. And there we go, known as Pendragon. And voila, you also will get this little ditty. Reclaimed Britannia, promote culture, Celtic culture only, speed plus 75%. So if you want to convert other locations to these Celtic cultures, it's much easier after you've done this. You don't need to do it while you're trying to expand the land. You can just simply do it this way. Now, again, this is very difficult. If we're looking over this, I mean, obviously, if I were to restart this game, you'd have Wessex down here, you'd have Mercia, you'd have Halfdan Whiteshirt right there, you'd have Ivar over on the left side, and then you'd have the King of Scotland. So, oh, and not to mention all of the independent portions of Ireland. So I find that starting as Welsh is probably the best and easiest way to go about this. Just because we started right here. Starting as the Welsh, you're kind of a little bit away and removed from the conflict that's mainly happening with the wrath of the Northmen, right? They're going to be raging down through over here and into these lands, into Mercia and into Wessex. So if you want to dodge that by just simply going Welsh, taking up these lands, because there's like 4 or 5 little Welsh nations right here, you can quickly deal with them. And I would actually take over Ireland quickly, because if you take over Ireland, you have a nice solid base away from the English heartland that you can then expand north into to push into Ivar, or further northeast to take out Scotland and then push down into the rest of England and let England kind of fight itself while it deals with the Northmen. You don't have to get involved in that fight until the very end. You can kind of come full circle, going west to north to south to eat everything up. And then after that, you can create the Empire of Britannia, if you so wish. And there we are. We are now a mighty emperor. And you have reclaimed Britannia. And you have an awesome title of Pendragon. This is another really fun one. You've probably seen it if you've played as the Welsh, but I think it's one of those ones that also is very challenging, and it requires you to take kind of a different path to taking over England, which requires kind of going away from the conflict and coming back around once you are stronger. Our next decision is one that we've talked about in our video on some great starting locations, but forming the Sultanate of Rum is a really fun decision that can be done on either 867 or 1066. In 1066, you do have the advantage of the Seljuk Turks starting a massive invasion of the Byzantine Empire. You can kind of piggyback off of that invasion and hopefully try to scrounge up some of the lands that you have to vie for the Sultanate of Rum. Now, the other option here is to start in 867. And when you do that, you have some pretty interesting situations that you can get into. So let's take a look at the Abbasid Caliphate here. It's huge, it's girthy, it's all sorts of in charge. Now, you can play as the Abbasids to do this, but I don't recommend it. It's going to be a little bit harder for you, just because you just have to deal with all of these vassals that are going to be at your heels. But you can go as this gentleman right here, the Duke of the Armani Emirate. Now, starting as this Emir is pretty cool, because let's look at the decisions that we have here. We've got 2 big pivotal ones. Form the Sultanate of Rum or revive Greater Armenia. And there's nothing necessarily that says you can't do both. So it would be pretty fun to do that. Let's take a look at this. So let's first look at the Sultanate of Rum, because it's part of this situation. And we're going to press all of these individual duchy titles. You have to own them. You have to be level 3 in your faith. and you have to be illustrious level 3. Now, you also have to be of the Islamic religion, any Islamic religion, or have your liege be the part of the Islamic religion. So in this case, we're set because our liege is part of Ash'ariism, which is a Muslim faith. So we're totally fine. You cannot be an emperor, though. So this guy can do it because it's in here, but if you are an emperor, you will not be able to create the Sultanate of Rum. So let's go back over to the to Armani, and we'll look at these decisions. Take a look at the locations, because they're all very close to where you start, and that's why this is so idyllic. So we can see that we'll start at the top of this one down here, which is bordering your land. This one here, also bordering your land. Also, guessed it. Yep, and this is the only one that's really far away from you. And if you're working through these duchy titles all the way up to this one, which you also need as well, you can get these two as to the left and rights of it. So it's pretty easy to be in a direct route to create the Sultanate of Rum. And remember, since you are a vassal, the vassal kind of gives you that little bit of insulation. They can't declare war on you, but you can declare war on them. You also do have to worry about other vassals wanting to declare war on you, though. There is that situation that you're going to have to deal with. But if we look at Revive Greater Armenia, look at Chaldea. That's probably our furthest east portion of the Sultanate of Rum. We have to own the former Armenian Empire. And if I actually have to click away from that first, and then we can do it here. Take a look. It's very close to the lands that you need anyway to create the Sultanate. So if you make your way up in this direction, take all these lands, you probably should take this one as well, and then just start making your way east after you've created the Sultanate, you then can create the Empire of Greater Armenia. So this is a really cool decision that pushes itself into another really cool decision, because you're starting in 867. Stuff is a little bit less, I guess a little bit less out of control. With the Seljuk Turk invasion of the Byzantine Empire, it's harder to take that land because you're essentially vying for power against your own liege. In this case, sure, your liege might be declaring war on the Byzantine Empire, but if you're just kind of going to war down here to get lands for, let's go ahead and take a look. We'll just declare a war and take a look here. We'll do a holy war on a duchy, and we can set this one. So that's one of our targets. We just, of course, have to get ourselves to the amount of piety to be able to do so. But you can see we do this one right out the gate, and we're in a pretty good position. Now, of course, you do have to know that this guy is going to be way stronger than you power-wise. So you want to solidify some really strong alliances before moving into this course of action. Or wait until the Byzantine Empire goes to war with someone, which they're going to, which they start at war with someone in 867. So they're already dealing with a war in Sicily, but you can wait until they've pulled forces towards that to then push into the Byzantine Empire to create your Sultanate of Rum and maybe even the Greater Armenian Empire after that. All right, it's our last decision to talk about, and it is becoming the greatest of Khans. Now, you've probably looked at this one. I've talked about it before also in my starting videos, or Great Start videos. And Great Liao is one that I think a lot of people have looked at to recreate the legacy of the Mongol Empire and Genghis Khan. Now, when we take a look at this actual starting location, though, it's pretty rocky. You already start with your factions about to start an independence war against you. And if you look at your forces, you only have 1,600, and your next strongest vassal has 1,100. So you are really going to be up a hill immediately when you start this campaign. So when we look at the decision, become the greatest of Khan, there are some requirements. You are Steppe, which is a pagan faith. Your level of fame is 4. Your realm size is 25 or more. You're a tribal government, and you're in the steppe region. And this is your capital. Your realm capital is in the steppe region. The steppe region, though, is huge, as you can see. It expands all the way over here, all the way over in this direction. So you have plenty of options for starting locations to accomplish this feat. You just simply have to also be of the Mongolic culture group. So when I look at this, our Mongolic culture groups are all right in this location. These are Turkic, so you want to be pretty much anything that is this this color around this region up here. So let us take a look at some other options here, because there are still quite a few strong ones around here. And with this independence war starting, they're going to have to fight that fight. And you can start as shitty, but you can gobble up some of these independent factions that are a little bit weaker, like this guy right here. If we take a look at the factions menu, we can even see 653, 453, 396. It might even be worthwhile to start as this specific vassal that is about to start this war. You're already at 1100 with all of your allies. You can simply depose the ruler of Great Liao and take it over. It's just simply a matter of, do you want to go through this actual way of conquering the lands, or you can take this location or this location and start from here and move south into the Great Liao as it's dealing with its independence war. So I think, and I've actually had a lot of requests about this one, how do I deal with starting out as Great Liao? I simply immediately jump into war. And if you don't want to deal with being another character outside of Great Liao, and you do want to be this character in specific, you are going to want to appease these guys fast. That means putting them onto your council if you can, paying them with gifts to try and make them happy, trying to sway them if you can. Like, you do have a little bit of time. You have 14 months until this independence faction kicks off. So you have to try and sway this as fast as you can. And you can see that this guy contributes 86% of this, and it's at 202. So if we simply are able to get this below the threshold of 80%, it will not kick off. So you do have your work cut out for you if you decide to be Great Liao actual, but becoming the greatest of Khans allows you to have a massive Mongolian horde. You get a special Mongolian invasion, casus belli, and you can just simply push through portions of the map at a very, very alarming rate. And look at this, you get massive hordes, 3,700, 9,200, 9,200, 9,200. So you'll be able to push westward, northward, and southward very easily. You just simply need to be of the steppe religion and get exalted of men among men. So you don't even need to get all of these regions to become the greatest of Khans. So just simply getting your reputation up, your fame, is going to be the biggest way to get this push forward. But you're going to have to first deal with which ruler you want to become the Khan at. That's going to be your big decision if you want to become the greatest of Khans. And that concludes some of our unique decisions. Now, I have provided a link to the Crusader Kings 3 wiki where you can look at some other decisions that I didn't cover, like the one where if you're a lunatic, you can create a glass capital building in your capital. You have a bunch of different really fun things to do here. So really take a look through this list. There's some things that I didn't touch on. There's some things that are a little bit more obvious. And we didn't even go into extreme detail on how to achieve each one of these decisions. I think that this game is very much about you trying to accomplish things in the way that you want to. But if there are specific decisions that you guys feel are ones that they're insurmountable, you can't seem to accomplish them, let me know in the comment section below. If I get enough votes for a very specific one, or there's one that people keep requesting, hey, I just need help with this one, I will try to do a step-by-step guide to show my way of completing or accomplishing specific unique decisions in Crusader Kings 3. But as always, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one. Take care.